So Juliana has just been a super lovely delegate throughout her entire time in LCM, and she will share a few words with you right now.
It's quite nostalgic for me to be out here today because I remember what it was like to be here at my own end of year gala some years ago. And it feels like a really full circle moment to be here with all of these students, learners, future change makers, and their families. As Katarina mentioned, I'm a fourth year medical student at UCSF. And today I want to share how my time in LCM helped me become an advocate in health. I want to talk to you about a concept that has helped me in medicine, in advocacy, and even in personal growth. And that is the scientific method. You've likely heard about it, learned about it in school. The scientific method helps us make sense of the world around us. We start by asking questions. How does this work? Why does this happen? From there, we create hypotheses, test with experiments, collect and analyze data, and draw conclusions, but most importantly, we keep asking more questions. The scientific method is an ongoing cycle of curiosity and learning. In the hospital, the scientific method is how we think every day. Every morning, I'm up at 6 a.m., I see my patients, I look at their blood tests, their imaging results, I see how they're doing, and I talk with the team to create a plan of care for them. Last week, a patient came in with stomach pain. Same. We could have just given them medication and sent them on their way, but if they're coming to the hospital, we know that there's something more happening. Why does their stomach hurt? Something wasn't adding up. Their imaging was pretty normal, maybe a little constipated. I mean, who isn't? But their blood pressure was dangerously high. So then the question wasn't why does their stomach hurt, but it's why is their blood pressure so high? We dug deeper. We asked about stress, medications, housing, transportation. Maybe they couldn't afford blood pressure medications. Maybe they didn't have a doctor who spoke their language to help them understand the dangers of high blood pressure. These are what we call social determinants of health, and they shape everything about how a patient walks through our doors. The scientific method has taught me to ask why 5 times, 10 times, until I reach the root cause of any specific issue. And once I'm there at the root, maybe we can do something about it. My patients, I have the privilege of caring for patients for all walks of life. I've worked with professors, other medical professionals, construction workers, people who've been incarcerated for years, people who have just moved to the States from across the globe. Every person has different goals and different values, and health may be just one of so many different priorities. I think all of us here can relate. Students, you guys might stay up late, finishing an assignment that's due tomorrow, or waking up early for a sports practice instead of getting the full 8-hour recommendation for sleep. Adults, maybe you're prioritizing your kids' needs or the needs of other family members instead of your own health. I've learned that my job as a future physician is not just to treat the illness in front of me, but to understand someone's story, take their priorities into account as we develop a plan. Storytelling itself can be therapeutic with patients, but more importantly, understanding someone's story is the key to advocacy. This mindset actually started in middle school. One might say in 5th grade when I joined the League of Creative Minds. I remember my very first committee was being in the International Atomic Energy Agency, and I was stoked, I was so thrilled, because I was like, okay, it's kind of science adjacent, maybe I'm a step closer to medicine. And then I got my country assignment. I pulled out this tiny little flag pin that she gave me, and it was for Cape Verde. I had no idea what that was. And maybe some of you don't either, and that's okay. It's a tiny little country off the coast of Africa. And, in a nuclear policy committee, honestly speaking, Cape Verde does not have the weapons or money to really have a lot of sway. But that didn't stop me and my co-delegate from speaking up. We raised our placards in every session. We may not have had influence, but we still had voices to speak up for small countries who, inevitably, nuclear weapons would affect. We fought for policies to protect these small nations, and through this experience and in every conference to come, I learned how to research, how to empathize, and how to advocate for people that I had no prior connection to. That lesson sticks with me today. When a patient walks in, I remember Cape Verde. I ask, what are the resources that this patient has? What are the barriers that they face in their health? What systems and decisions made by more powerful people affect their health today? And what would it take for them to meet their individual goals? Sometimes it means providing care outside of the hospital, connecting them to caregivers, physical therapy, addiction support, and housing resources. It is not a perfect system, but asking these questions get us one step closer to long-term solutions for these patients' health, and that is what advocacy looks like in medicine. And advocacy doesn't just stop at patient relationships, it's also about systemic change. Research shows us that patients do better when treated by providers who share their culture, their language, or lived experiences. For example, in the US, Black newborns die at 3 times the rate of white newborns. But when cared for by Black physicians, their survival improves significantly. Non-English speaking patients do better when doctors speak their language. We see improved diabetes control, lower complication rates, and reduced mortality in hospitals. For me, individual advocacy means working on my Spanish, building cultural understanding, and asking better questions to truly connect with my patients. But at a systemic level, advocacy means working to diversify the physician workforce and supporting the next generation of doctors. Before med school, I had never met a Filipino physician here in the States. And so I co-founded the Filipino American Medical Student Association because I know that representation builds trust, mentorship, and a pipeline for change. As a class representative for the last 3 years, I've also worked to expand access to transportation, meals, and language learning initiatives for medical students. We need to support our future doctors because better supported doctors take better care of our patients. Zooming out even more and just, bringing it all together, why am I talking about the scientific method today? We face a bigger challenge in these times. The scientific method is under attack. Misinformation and very powerful voices are fueling a distrust in science. And as someone who's very familiar with both the power and the limitations of research, let me be very clear. Science evolves. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw guidelines shift around masks, vaccines, treatment protocols as we learned more information and got more data. But that's not a weakness, the fact that things change, it's a strength. The scientific method is self-correcting, and it gets stronger and it gets better as we learn to ask better questions. But unfortunately right now, people weaponize that evolution to sow doubt. And it's becoming a public health crisis. And honestly, it's a little bit scary. Vaccine hesitancy, for example, is not a new concept. It's been around since the 1800s when vaccines first came about. But there's been a surge in the last couple of years along political lines. Diseases like measles, a deadly illness that has killed many children historically, was declared eliminated in 2000, is now coming back. Why? A lot of things could go into it, but we know that media consolidation plays a role. Some people get their news from one news outlet. Others draw from a broader range. The danger that we face today is not having different opinions. Everyone here in this room, we probably all represent a diverse spectrum of perspectives and experiences. The danger is not differing opinions. The danger is the absence of curiosity. It's losing the desire to learn more and understand better. And that's where all of you come in. It's not really typical of a 7th grader, 6th grader, maybe a 5th grader in the room to be browsing BBC, Al Jazeera, CNN, NPR, New York Times on a weekly basis, but all of you here are doing that. And I know it can feel tedious at times, but I encourage you to not see it as homework. This is training. This is training to gather pieces of the truth, to dig deeper, to ask better questions. Because whether you go into medicine, policy, education, law, business, whatever your path, I ask all of you today to not settle for easy answers. Be investigators instead, and keep asking why. Because advocacy Just like the scientific method, it's not a job title, it's not a resume line, and it's certainly not contained into one industry. Advocacy is a mindset. It's an iterative process. It's a commitment to curiosity, to ask why, and when you find an answer to your questions, to take action. Thank you.